Romanticism, probably the most prolific period in the arts, together with the Elizabethan age. So, when was it? Well, let's start here first of all. There is a broad and there is a narrow way of looking at these things. A broad definition would be the period between, say, something like 1780 and 1830, those 50 years. Okay. For England, usually you use this more narrow definition, and you say the time between 1798 and 1824, because in 1798 the greatest book ever published in Romanticism collection of poems, William Wordsworth and Coleridge's Lyrical Ballads was published. And some people say, Romanticism in England starts really with that, okay, with the Lyrical Ballads, and ends with the death of the great Lord Byron in Greece in 1824. So this would be a more narrow way of looking at it. Mind that these dates are more or less concerned with Europe. As far as the United States are concerned, the period will be certainly last longer, because it took some time for Romanticism to reach the United States. Okay, so Edgar Allan Poe would probably still be romantic, although he lived and worked after when Romanticism had already stopped on the continent in Europe. Okay, it's the last period, and this makes it so important, which concerned all the arts, which means music, painting, okay, even to some extent sculpture and architecture, and of course literature, most of all. So all the arts, and then all over Europe. Periods later were very much confined to, Germany or France or England or something like this. No, Romanticism concerned all of Europe, okay, and all the arts. And it probably was the last time when Germany was the leading nation, because most of the ideas associated with Romanticism originated with German philosophers and German writers. So that we have the fascinating situation that the English the world looked to Germany and studied in Germany. A lot of English romantics went to Germany, studied German, studied in Germany, because this was very much the stronghold of Romanticism. Okay. In a way, what is it, Romanticism? You could say it's a counter-movement to the Rationalism of the 18th century. Okay, we learned that the 18th century is very rational, the Augustan age, it's the time of reason, the time of mimesis, the time when people thought there was a rational approach to the world around us, which would be very much the same for everybody. This changes, okay? This rationalism becomes very transcendental, something like this, the complete opposite. We come to that in a minute. So yes, it is, in a way, a counter-movement to the rationalism of the 18th century, and it is a revolution in the arts as much as the French Revolution is in politics. It's certainly no coincidence that most romantics endorse the French Revolution, at least in the beginning. Okay, later on, when it turned into terror, that was a different thing, but the French Revolution is the great event in politics. And it coincides with the birth of Romanticism, and it's certainly no coincidence. Okay, you will see how this goes together. So yeah, a revolution in the arts and a revolution in politics, which changed the world forever. The French Revolution did. So did Romanticism, by the way, because in certain respects we still are today in the times of post-Romanticism. Believe me, our world would be completely different if it hadn't been for Romanticism. Just to say something, if people go outside and think the sea is a very romantic thing to be at, okay, to watch the waves and the sunset and all these things. I mean, come on, this is romantic. No one in the 18th century would have thought the sea is a fascinating thing to watch. The sea for people before Romanticism is a threat. It's where you drown. It's where you shipwreck and all these things. Only romantics told us that it could be beautiful. Okay, the same thing for the big mountains. Okay, romantics fascinated with the Alps. I mean, before that, people would have thought, I mean, the Alps, what are they? I mean, you get lost there. It's ice and snow. Oh, you can't pass them. All that, and then the romantics come and say, wow, how great it is. We still are like that today. The romantics told us that. This is what I say, yeah, a revolution. Everything is turned topsy-turvy. Have this more systematic. Here you have some things about the 18th century and about Romanticism. Okay, I said the 18th century is very rational. Okay, we had that. Therefore, Romanticism becomes very emotional. Okay, people wallow in their emotions, particularly artists do. Okay. The 18th century is very much concerned with the city, with city life. People like Swift and Pope and so on. It's all about politics and the city and London and all these things. No, Romanticism is the exact opposite. It's all about country life, how beautiful the country is, how beautiful nature is, all these things. Okay, complete change. The next pair would be probably 18th century, very much into adulthood. Adults, it's all about grown-ups. I mean, no children play any role in 18th century literature or painting or whatsoever. But the Romantics are very just the opposite. I mean, childhood is endorsed. Yeah? Childhood as the important phase in a human being's life when you are formed, when you become the one you later will be, which is, again, a very modern thought. Think about that. Children have a certain wisdom. The Romantics would say, an 18th century person would say, children are just small people which you have to educate. No, a Romantic would say, let us be educated by children. Okay. Objective, subjective, yes. It's very. There's always an objective way of looking at things in the 18th century, a way that is the same for everybody. No, I mean, a Romantic would certainly say the exact opposite. That everything is very subjective. It depends on the one who sees. Okay, there is no objective way of looking at things. Subjectivity is suddenly the great thing. Okay. Yes, the 18th century is very elitist. You remember I talked about that. If you don't know your Latin and Greek, okay, in the 18th century, you are lost completely. If you want to read Alexander Pope without knowing Homer and Virgil, I mean, it's going to be difficult. You don't have that in Romanticism. To some extent, those writers play a role, but no, it's egalitarian insofar as Romantic literature and art wants to be understood by everybody. William Blake, the great Romantic, he boasted that children could understand him. This is the good thing. I mean, no. One in the 18th century wanted to be understood by children. He wanted to be understood by I don't know, people who studied in Cambridge and Oxford, but certainly not by children. Yeah, egalitarian means so everybody is equal and everybody should understand that. There are more of these pairs, and I probably will come to those later on, but you see, we said the 18th century is the Augustan age, which means they look back to ancient times as the model. Certainly no coincidence that Romanticism looked back to the Middle Ages and to the Renaissance to some extent, because, I mean, this was a lot more emotional. The Middle Ages were all about ghosts and dragons and imagination, if you like, not very rational as the ancients. And so this changes too. I mean, if the Romantics sought literary inspiration, okay, they turned back to the Middle Ages and to the Renaissance. 18th century people would turn back to Virgil, Ovid, Catullus, and all these great ancient writers. Okay, there are more of these pairs, but just to give you a general introduction why it is such a big revolution. And most of all, it is that And we talked about that art in the 18th century was basically mimesis. Okay, an 18th century writer, artist would say there is an objective way of depicting reality. Okay, and art has to be measured. This is Aristotle, who still plays a very important role in the 18th century. Art is measured insofar how close it comes to reality, and reality is the same for everybody, and this is what art is in the 18th century. In Romanticism, this concept of mimesis is completely supplanted by the concept of imagination. Okay, there's no imagination in the 18th century, but suddenly in Romantics, imagination, thinking strange worlds up, making your own reality, constructing your own reality. And in a way, this reality which you construct is probably more worthwhile than the real thing. Okay, making it up. There is this, I've just reread Schiller, but in a way, I mean, Schiller is pre-romantic, yeah, when he says, alles wiederholt sich nur im Leben, ewig jung ist nur die Fantasie. Was sich nie und nirgends hat ergeben oder gegeben, das allein veraltet nie. Yeah? Which means what you imagine, this stays forever. I mean, real things, they vanish and are gone. Okay, this is basically what Schiller says, something like that. For a romantic, yeah, the individual makes the reality by imagining it, by starting with real things and then creating imaginary worlds. And the fact that, and this is probably I wanted to finish this session here, think about that, that really everybody has a different view of the world. Think about taste, for example. Okay, you may look at a painting and think it is very beautiful, and your best friend thinks it's ugly. So what is taste? Isn't taste nothing but a different sensation of reality? Okay, that reality is, for her or him, different than your reality because you think it's beautiful and he or she thinks it's ugly, and therefore you have the reality, a different reality. Yeah, reality for you is different than for your best friend. This would be taste. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. So have these key concepts straight. I mean, probably the center of romantic belief is exactly that. Yeah. Mimesis, 18th century, is done away with and supplanted by imagination. And this is true for everything, for the arts, yeah? Very emotional, very imaginative. This is just if you compare, I don't know, Bach and Chopin, and you know exactly what it is, yeah? Chopin, very emotional, very imaginative, yeah? Beautiful music, and Bach, very mathematical, rational, huh? Okay, these things. Probably the first romantic composer would be Beethoven, and that's the difference. Yeah, da 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 da. Very, you hear the emotion here. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. I mean, you could say Romanticism in music, yeah, starts with Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Okay, yeah, we go on from here.